Welcome to East Coast DNA. This is
Darcy.
And I'm his brother Andrew. We're a couple of East Coast brothers bringing you news and interviews from East Coast musicians. But today we have Peter Willie Youngtree from Newfoundland. How are you today?
Yeah. Hello.
And his band is Youngtree and the Blooms. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm on my third coffee, and I think I'm waking up.
I had someone a couple weeks ago, JD Shore is a rum company out of Halifax.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to how good this JD Shore coffee is. And I was like, I didn't know they made coffee. They don't. They make a coffee liqueur. This
There you go.
This one was saying how good their morning coffee was. And I was like, oh, it's not.
You just drink at 8 a.m. No
yeah,
problem.
yeah, you're just starting early. Yeah.
I thought about it today.
You're born and raised in St. John's then?
No, I was born in Placentia, Newfoundland, about an hour and a half from here, from St. John's. It's on the southwest Avalon. Right. Born there in the old cottage hospital, probably one of the last babies ever born there. And after that, I was raised in Dunnville, which is basically the same town. Went to school out there, went through high school, and moved to St. John's when I was just about 18.
Okay. And music was a big inspiration. I checked your bio out there. Always kind of had music playing in the house growing up?
Always, yeah. My dad was part of him and his siblings had I'm like so my father's one of 11 children and my mother's one of 16.
Oh, wow.
So just a huge family, and our house was kind of the hub for people to come and have fun and party and play music. So my dad actually played, semi-professionally with his siblings, and they would do folk festivals and club gigs and things like that. And yeah, when I grew up in, small town Newfoundland, I could just go to a bar when I was 8 or 9 or 10 if I was with my parents, to hear music or whatever. It wasn't really, it wasn't so strict as it is now.
We used to go buy cigarettes for our grandmother.
I bought cigarettes for my father with a note, Dear Mary, Peter, please give Peter a pack of Export A greens,
Yeah, just send us with a box and we want these.
Yeah. Yeah. Different times, man. But yeah, I grew up there till I was, almost 18. Started my first band in high school, called Exploder. Kind of a hard rock cover band, and I just fronted that as the lead singer. Yeah. And I had a lot of energy then, as I still do. And we moved to St. John, started playing in town, and that lasted about a year. And then, I don't know, everybody's egos got too big or something, and which is hilarious and ridiculous. But I learned some lessons.
Yeah. Post-teen is a hard time to have that glue stick. Yeah.
Yeah. Weird time. So that disbanded. I finished my psychology degree in 2009, and then I went to traveling and started writing songs, and adopted the name Peter Willie Youngtree as a stage kind of persona. And yeah.
You were in Nashville at the time when you did that?
Yeah, so I was traveling, and I spent about, I was in Nashville for about a week, and I was so clueless. Like, I still didn't even know that Nashville was what it was,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I knew it was something. I didn't realize exactly, how much of the music I had loved came from there and all that sort of thing. I just wasn't into... Yeah, I never had a good memory for retention for all the little facts and details about music. I've always been more of a feeler, I guess. And so, yeah. Anyway, yes, I was in Nashville. I started, and so when I got there, it's like I rolled into town at 9 a.m. with my backpack and a guitar, and trying to find some breakfast, and I walk into a place at 10 a.m. and there's a guy on stage singing, playing and singing his original music. I'm like, that's a weird thing for 10 a.m. on a Wednesday, and you go down the street and people are out busking and they're all playing their own songs. And everywhere you go, everyone's just playing their own songs, and everyone's telling you the story about how they wrote this song. And I was like, this is freaking cool. and a lot of it is not good, and that's fine too. But everyone's just doing their thing.
It's from the heart.
It's from the heart. I was walking down. I decided I was gonna, try to, write some songs down there. So I like grabbed my guitar and walked to the park, and these two guys sitting in a bus stop called out to me like, "Hey, you got a guitar? You play some music?" I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll come in and sit down with you." And I think one was definitely homeless, and one seemed like he was probably, maybe frequently homeless, and the yeah, so we started singing songs, and I gave him the guitar, and he's like, "Now I wrote this song." And I was in the back of a gas station, and these married couple came by and said, "Hey, are you a songwriter?" And I said, "Yes." And they said, "Can you write us a song? We just got married." And he's like, "And here's what I wrote." And he just played a song, and then a bus came up, and this guy gets off, and he's got a brown bag full of whiskey, and he's just this brick shithouse kind of a guy. And he's like, "Hey, you." And I look up, and I said, "Yeah." He said, "Yeah, you. Do you play country music?" And I said, "No, I don't. I didn't really at the time play much country music. I could, but anyway." And he's like, "Well, I just got out of the penitentiary after 13 years, and I got off that bus to hear you play some country music."
Oh, God.
And then he rips off his shirt and shows me, like, "Look at all my scars." And he's just got knife, like he's been cut up.
Yeah.
And anyway, the other guy who had written the song, asked him if he could have a sip of his whiskey, and I just was like, "Well, got out of there." But yeah, I was busking down there, and I wrote a couple of songs just that afternoon, and went and played them on a street corner. And someone asked my name. I said, "It's Peter Willie Youngtree," and that just kind of came up because a friend of mine back home in Newfoundland had kind of jokingly dubbed me that for some reason before I left, and then I just started going by it. Yeah,
So you don't really know your origin. It's just a name.
it's
Or do you
it
know
happened when we were out. I was up in a tree. I love climbing trees. I love trees in general, and I can't. If I turned my computer that way, you would see about a dozen plants growing over here.
Mhm.
But yeah, I was climbing it, and I was like hanging off it and swinging off it, and my friend said, "You're gonna hurt that tree." I said, "I'd never hurt this tree. This is a young tree, just like me." And that's
Okay. Yeah.
And then she just frolicked around saying, "Peter Willie Youngtree," because she's like a fairy. And yeah, that's it. Really, that's kind of the story.
Andrew actually had a note in there too for your 24th birthday, which would have been following your Nashville trip. You
Yeah.
had an interesting experience.
Yeah, my 24th birthday, I was in a Zen Buddhist monastery, like a center in New Mexico, in the Jemez Mountains. It's called Bodhimanda Zen Center. Yeah, so like immediately following Nashville, it's funny when I think I was 22 and I was in Nashville traveling, and my intention was to hitchhike down through like Mississippi and get to Louisiana. And at that point, I've been traveling for about a month, and you just start following little signs and intuitions. So I like went to sleep and had a dream that I was swimming in the Pacific Ocean,
Yeah.
and it felt really peaceful. So I woke up and I booked a flight to San Diego. Just like, well, all my other plans are gone. I'm just going to San Diego, and met a guy there named Carl, who this story actually goes way back to like when I left Newfoundland, and the person who picked me up hitchhiking off the ferry was from Santa Barbara,
All right.
and he had this whole crazy story of he had fallen off a 200-foot cliff and was in a coma and had this huge like spiritual revelation. And anyway, so I called. He's like, "If you end up in California, give me a call, and I'll get you places to stay all along the coast." And I was like, "Oh, awesome!" So I called him. I was like, "Hey, I just booked a flight to San Diego," and he said, "I'll get back to you in a couple of hours." And he said, "My friend Carl's going to pick you up at the airport, and you're going to stay with him." And Carl and I, yeah, we just like have hours long, conversations about philosophy and stuff in the mornings. And when I left, he gave me a book called Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind by Shunryu Suzuki. And when I started reading it, and I was like, wow. And, within a year, I was looking to see, are there any like actual Japanese Zen masters left teaching in America? And there was one, and his name was Joshu Sasaki Roshi. And he was also Leonard Cohen's Zen teacher, is the one that Leonard Cohen kind of cared for. And I didn't know that at the time anyway, but I wrote them and I was like, can I come to this monastic training period that you're doing? It's like 6 weeks long. And so I did, and I spent 2 months there. So yeah, including my 24th birthday, that was about halfway through probably. Yeah. So my 24th birthday I was 7 days into a silent retreat where you would basically sit in meditation about 14 or 15 hours a day.
Oh, wow.
You only had 3 20-minute periods of free time, and otherwise you were sitting or eating or attending a lecture or instruction from the teacher. And yeah, sleep was probably about 4 hours a night. You would sleep from like 10 till 2 or 10:30 till 2:30 or so, and it got you up super early, ringing bells. And yeah, it was crazy. I remember it's just such a wild thing because I was, just walking around in this like desert mountain of New Mexico. And at some point, I was like a month in or whatever, and just hit me like, I'm like doing the weirdest thing in the world right now, like I literally, everything I do is ritualized and is determined by gongs and bells and like chanting and like, so someone rings a gong and I start like chanting a thing and get up and walk around, and then I go sit and, there's incense burning, and every time you have a meal, you're chanting and bowing, and but it becomes second nature. But when you're in it, but it's pretty wild when you suddenly just zoom out and you're like, what the hell am I doing? This is wild.
Is that something you carried on after that?
I still practice it. Totally. What I did after there was I went to one of the Roshi's Oshos. He was like a kind of a priest. Has a center just outside Ithaca, New York. So I left New Mexico and went straight to Ithaca, New York. Met with him. His name is Yoshin David Rayner, and that was 2010. And I've been going back there ever since. I just was there in September. And yeah, so he's been my teacher since then. And now, but most of my time has been here in Newfoundland, so it's kind of been do it myself. I read books and I do sitting meditation, kind of find people here and there who are interested. And it's a good practice. Currently I'm kind of open to new things and new ideas. I've been reading some Ralph Waldo Emerson lately, transcendentalist philosopher, America in like the mid 19th century. And yeah, a lot of his ideas really overlap with Zen, I find too.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, this is kind of,
there's a guy in New York.
What's that, sorry?
A guy from New York wrote a book, Zen Guitar. I bought that about 5 years ago. And it's like 1-page passages and stuff. So it started kind of getting me interested. So when I saw that you did this, I was like, I need to know a little more about that. So yeah.
It really is it's really an attitude more than anything, and an approach to living. It's like, and I think this, sitting meditation is just about being and kind of getting in touch with just your like intuition and your nature, and coming to like have for lack of a better word, I guess, like faith in that. And being able to just operate, for me, it's like operating from your gut as opposed to like in your head all the time. Think like, thoughts are limiting and they can really get tangly, but if you can just kind of like relax and just go inside yourself, it's like a lot of the answers to the problems are just right there waiting to be grabbed, but you kind of, a lot of times the thought gets in the way. That's my experience. And so, and once I saw that, it's like it applies to guitar playing. It applies to performance. It applies to whatever, doing interviews,
I find that if you focus on what's happening more than what's going to happen, and kind of my philosophy now, I've taught myself over the last 10 years or so, whatever happened 2 seconds ago is in the past. and just focus on what's happening and not what just happened, and makes it easier to live. I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's smart because you actually can't change any of that stuff, and you can only go forward. So
yeah,
absolutely.
How did those life experiences overlap your discography? It looks like your recordings took place after those experiences.
Yeah, my first record was Country Hymns. That was a solo effort, and so that would be songs I wrote between like 2009 and 2014. So yeah, from the time like traveling down in Nashville, the first song I wrote down there is on Country Hymns, and then going through the, there's a song called Prayer for Our Enemies, which is about, I'm gonna let my enemies become my friends. So that is directly influenced by sitting meditation, and because you have thoughts, ideas, things about the past that are, you're like antagonized against as a person, you let them become your friends. There's a song called Autumn in New Mexico on there, which is just about living in the mountains of New Mexico, cutting wood for the Roshi, for the Zen master, and watching the forest fires and stuff like that were down there. Song called Without Bounds, which is kind of an embarrassing effort on my part when I listen to it now, because I have no business trying to hit these notes that I'm trying to hit in that song, but whatever, I did it anyway. So yeah, and it was called Country Hymns because it was very much like half the album's kind of written before or like, yeah, it's really just about country, and half the album is very influenced by spirituality. And so and even the cover of that album, I have it over there somewhere. I could grab it and show people. I'm sitting there wearing this very vest, actually, in front of a barn outdoors. But arrayed all around me is like statues of Buddha and Jesus and things like that. So it's very much the kind of motif of the album. And then going on from there, I think the next album we did, Youngtree and the Blooms, or the debut, was called Musical Chairs. That was centered a lot on mortality and death specifically. And that was released in 2018. And a lot of that was, and I think my whole like trajectory of becoming interested in religion and spirituality was influenced by a lot of my like early experiences as a child, where, having family members die around me, and that just kind of continues. Like I said earlier, I have 25 aunts and uncles, and then 53 first cousins. So when you have a big family, you lose some of them. It's just that's just how it works.
Yeah, actually, that's probably where you jumped out at me when I was listening. We were looking to explore the other provinces a little bit more, and I actually got some feedback from a few different people for some Newfoundland artists to kind of expand my knowledge a little bit. But you showed up in my own research rather than a recommendation, and I think it was at the time when I was doing research, there were some deaths in my personal life. So I think maybe some of your lyrics were speaking to me subconsciously, because I was like, oh, what's that? And I'd go back over and start digging a little deeper, and your name came up a couple times. So plus your Seas Change single, which we can get into later. The video for that, I'm a beach fiend, so visually that grabbed me right away.
Right.
But nice. Those themes, when I went back to listen to that Musical Chairs album of death and grief, loss, it did stick out as we went along. And that's what I was wondering, if some of those journeys that you were on and exploring spirituality, I was wondering if you went on those journeys and that's where the songs came from, which it does sound like kind of. I think my assumption of the timeline's a little different. But now, since then, where you do have a new album, was there anything new to the story in between, besides COVID, which we are all very, very familiar with, or maybe that is what it is. But I noticed the newer songs have a theme more so of not necessarily renewal, but of acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to say moving on, but it almost is the acceptance and then the fact that there's something new there. Rather than a rebirth. It's not a replacement. It's not a moving on. It's just the next chapter.
Yeah.
Was that intentional between those albums? Or is that
I don't
your
think
personal
so.
life?
It was pretty organic, but I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head. I try not to analyze what's happening too much. It's kind of like what I was talking about earlier. It's just like living from the gut. Like, I'm gonna write this thing, and sometimes when I was writing songs for this record, sometimes I would just stop and get analytical and like, geez, this is too cheesy. Like, and then I would just stop it. And like, doesn't matter. It's like something. This is what wants to be written right now. You can decide later if it's, or some producer can help decide if this is too, if this is garbage or not.
If you ever feel cheesy with your lyrics, I'll send you some of mine and you'll be okay.
There you go. Yeah.
But for instance, I was writing the first single, "Heaven Ain't a Lonely Road," and it just felt so straightforward and kind of boring when I analyzed it, and yet it was coming from such a real place in me that I said, it's that song was written based on a very close friend and someone who'd been a musical mentor to me my entire life, was very seriously ill and in the hospital. And so but his whole ethos, his whole way of being was to just be completely appreciative of everyone around him for everything they'd done. And he was like that, for a lot of, it wasn't just when he got sick. He was always this way. And, but it just kind of amplified when he was sick. And, his attitude was just incredible. And, he really, I think in a situation like that, there's a way people tend to just distill life down into these very poignant things. And, his main thing was, there's people around, like, you can't get through this without the people around you. And it's, and they know that is like where the meaning is, and, it was so poignant when he would say this to me. And I just, I sat down writing it, and I decided to turn off all analytical thought and just go for it. And I love the song, and a lot of people think it's, it's a lot of people's favorite. But yeah, you're right in that there's also a lot of, it really is about going forward. And
it was more optimistic, I think, than what I've been listening to a lot of different stuff throughout the calendar year with this podcast, and everyone in the East Coast did have kind of a melancholy tone to a lot of their releases the last couple of years. Not overall, but there was that theme that kept coming up because everyone in the world has been suffering.
Yeah.
But I think that's the optimism is kind of speaking through the lyrics a little bit there. So I think that might have been why, like I said, there's something about the album that made me keep going back to it when I was going through all the different music I had to pick from. And I think that might have been the difference, is that as a collection, it's almost like you made a concept album here. I just don't know if that was your intention.
It's, I think, yeah, I definitely, so, there's 9 songs on the album. I wrote more than 9 songs between those 2 albums. I definitely, when I would sit down to write, it was like I wanted to write positive things. I wanted to write things that people would feel good when they heard them. Like I definitely did. And of course, there were moments where I was writing not so positive things, but and some of them we recorded in the sessions. But when it came to actually choosing what was going on the album, there's a song I wrote I really like, and we recorded it, and it sounds really good, and it's got this Latin feel. It's called "Something's Gonna Come for Me," but it's very haunting, and I just didn't want it on the record, so it's not there. I wanted. It's really important to me as an entertainer that when I or the band gives a performance, that people come in and they leave feeling better than when they got there.
Sure.
And I don't know if I always felt that way. Especially with the last record, I really had to, I don't know why, I just wanted to get this, I wanted to dive into death and mortality. And I really actually, tried to do that in a way that was a little more lighthearted at times. Songs like Dirt Party and 10 Million Ways to Decay, which is, serious, but full of, life and energy.
Those songs in particular are very, like they're foot stomping country songs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And thank you for listening, by the way. But yeah. And, but, I kind of realized like, I think this lands, I don't find it super morbid. I find it very like, I find talking about death and stuff very like kind of freeing. But I think it lands morbidly with a lot of people. And so, yeah, this record, like I really wanted that people would hear it and kind of say, yes, like, yeah, we feel good. This is good. This feels good. I wanted to write things with a bit of a faster tempo. Yeah. And just all stuff like that. I'm not that anymore. That's all about transitioning, changing from one thing to another, and, not being what you were 2 seconds ago, as as Andrew said, Yeah. So thanks for noticing that. Yeah. It was partly intentional and partly just, it was intentional, but it came from within. It's just like,
Sure.
this is what needs to happen.
A little bit unintentional, a little bit curation, and overall as a package it works because it delivered the message you were looking for anyway.
Seems like it. You got it.
And the Seas Change video, like I said, that kind of pulled me in because I love beaches. Seeing the ocean in the background helps thematically with what we're trying to accomplish here, promoting East Coast music too, right?
Right.
But that video in particular, was that a pretty small video shoot, or like it looked like a lot of effort, but it's mostly you on the beach?
Yeah, that was a low budget shoot. It was my friend M, who has started a company called Steel Cut Media. She's a photographer, videographer. I asked her if she was interested in doing this thing. I had a kind of a concept for it, all one shot along the beach, and that maybe I would just kind of emerge out of the water or go into the water. We ended up doing both. And she was into it. So there was 4 of us went out there. Had someone doing photography. My partner was doing photography and kind of just helping out. We camped out on the beach overnight. And had someone playing the track. We sped the track up 1.5 times its speed, and so I sang it and moved to it in that tempo to kind of have everything else moving slowly around me sort of effect when we put it, so we went out there and did 4 takes at sunset, and we lit a fire. We cooked, we had a nice meal of like curry in the evening and sat around singing some songs around the campfire, camped out in our tents, got up about 5:30 in the morning and did 4 more takes at sunrise. And we just had to pick one to use. So ended up using the third take at Sunset just because the light and the color were awesome. Yeah, the morning, I almost went for the morning one.
Yeah,
because there's a lot of cool things happening in it. Like these two seals were there in the tide with me, and they were bopping up, and when I was dancing on the beach, you could see them out there looking up, and then they'd splash around. And yeah, I mean, maybe I'll like release that sometime for a little bit
save them for the remix.
Extra. Yeah,
some
kind of content. Yeah,
perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So the Blooms.
Yep.
They were not on that initial album, but your 2018 and the new October 14th release.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the same bands that you've been using all along and same people that you record with, or is that band mix up a little bit?
We did a little bit of a change on this new record. We had gone into the studio. Yeah, it's funny, doing this record was, I wanted to do the most live off the floor record we had ever done, and ended up doing the least live off the floor record ever. The first album was actually, my solo album. I call it a solo album, but there was I had musicians playing with me, and those were that was legitimately live off the floor. I did my vocals the same time as everyone played their things. There was no room for overdubs for the most part.
I could feel that recording, that it felt not raw, but it felt raw. If that makes sense. It felt.
Yeah, it does. It feels raw, live. And so sometimes I listen to it now. I'm like, oh boy, like not even the slightest bit of tuning on anything, in like post, right? No, so it just was what it was. And then, second album, we did all the band stuff live off the floor. And so that would be musical chairs, and I played with them, but then I went in and did my acoustics and vocals after. And this record, I wanted to do really live off the floor again, but we spent, I think, 10 to 12 days in the studio. And when I got all the mixes back, it was kind of like, this isn't working. It's not, it wasn't good. It just, the vibe was, I was like, if I sat down to put this on and listen to it, I wouldn't really be interested in listening to it. So I had to reimagine it. And in that, so the drummer we've been playing with for quite a while, like since, I've been playing with him since 2014. His name's Chuck Boyd. He, we kind of had a chat, and he was kind of feeling like he was maybe done with the bar scene and gigging life and all that sort of thing. And so, we got another drummer to come in, who's a great local musician named Chris Donnelly. And so he ended up laying all the drum tracks again. And then we re-recorded all the bass. And then just, it was like building, all of a sudden we're just in the studio, and, but that was fun actually, because the co-producer and engineer, Mark Feener, he was really, this is his realm. He's like his wheelhouse. He loves being behind the desk and kind of trying out new things. So I started getting more interested in experimentation, trying new instruments, trying new sounds, messing around with my vocal style a bit. And so I mean, it kind of built from the ground up. But so Darren Brown has been the bass player with us since the beginning, but he also is finished with touring life, so he'll play gigs with us here. So right now the Blooms is really me and Carol Bestvater on the violin and Joe Tucker on the electric guitar, and three of us are the core, and then we'll hire drummers and bass players when we go out, and that's what we had to do this summer. So we toured through Ontario and Nova Scotia, and hired a rhythm section for Ontario, a rhythm section for Nova Scotia. And that was, I call this a year of taking risks, because even right from January 2nd, from listen, because we did the live off the floor stuff in December of last year. And when I heard those mixes, it was like, man, I can't put this out. And also I've used the whole budget for the album. And so then it's just like, all right, well, let's just go forward and hope for the best now. And I don't know what's going to happen. And, we had booked huge, bigger gigs than we've ever had before. We played Mariposa Folk Festival, the first performance up there was in front of like 4,000 people, and never played an audience that big before. And we literally got to Toronto on like July 4th, and met a bass player and a drummer who's I'd sent them the music, and we rehearsed for 3 hours, and then we just started playing gigs. And on the way to Nova Scotia, the person I had hired to play bass got COVID the day before we got there, and I had to find another bass player. Like, can you learn 18 songs by tomorrow? And it all works out in the end. And so that that's the long answer to your question of who are the Blooms. But it's I'm the front person, and then you got Carol and Joe, and whoever else is available and wants to play with us. Yeah.
Perfect. Mm-hmm. So Darcy looked through the Blooms and found some bands they've been in the past, and we always make a compilation playlist to go with each episode. Cool. And Darcy kind of combs through YouTube, makes a YouTube list on that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's usually it'll be based around you, but and your band and your inspiration. So what kind of inspiration would you like in that playlist, and anyone else you'd like to plug into that playlist? I hear in your voice like a Bob Dylan meets Leonard Cohen meets Jack White kind of mesh of tone and feel.
Yeah. Yeah, all of them are definitely inspirations. Yeah. I would add John Prine to it as a huge inspiration, as well as like, definitely. And in terms of songs I want on I would put on the list. Oh my God, there could be so many. Interestingly, I don't know. Yeah, like this album. So what you see behind me is this is just a part of a renovation I was doing in my house, in 2021, and during lockdowns. There was like a 2-month period in Newfoundland where basically nobody saw anybody at that time, and I was here. I just did all this, and I went back listening to a lot of like music I grew up with that was like kind of alternative type music that was on the radio in the early mid 90s. Like, I took a deep dive into the Tragically Hip, like started watching old interviews with them. So the Hip were a huge influence on me because I listened to them and read their lyric books. Like, I studied them even when I was like 10 or 11 years old. I was always fascinated with Gord Downie's lyrics, and he had a cool approach to writing that always just resonated with me. I also, so I was listening to like the Gin Blossoms a lot last year, and I think a lot of that kind of style got made its way into this new record, and sometimes subtly and sometimes maybe more obviously.
I've bought Miserable Experience multiple times.
I mean, it's a great sound and album, It's they really just hit all the sweet spots. Mm-hmm. Production's awesome. I was like, jangle pop is a great genre. It's a great name for a genre. Mm-hmm. Things that jangle are always just it just sparkles and lights up. So I mean, influences. I mean, I grew up on a lot of 50s and 60s pop music, and country music, like Roger Miller and the Everly Brothers, and girl groups, the Ronettes and things like that. But also Nirvana and Radiohead and The Hip and Soundgarden and like bands like that. Mm-hmm. I think Dylan was always around in my house, and so was Leonard Cohen. They were like pinnacles of my parents' music collection. Pinnacles? That's not the right word. Pillars, maybe.
Pillars.
But oh man, songs to go on there. For my influences, I would definitely put a Tragically Hip song on there. Which one? I don't know. There's so many. Why not like Escape is at Hand for the Traveling Man? I always love that one. And Cohen. I'm actually performing a Cohen song at a annual Cohen tribute concert that happens here. every year. I'm doing 2. One is Hey, That's No Way to Say Goodbye, which is, standard. The other is This What You Wanted?
Did you record the other one before Somewhere Live? I think I was.
Yes.
I saw it on YouTube.
You've gone deep. Yeah, that's I played that in Halifax at Coda Pop, which I don't think exists anymore. They were a studio and used to do house concerts. So I traveled through there and did a show, and yeah, that was 2017. So Cohen had just died in the fall, in November. And I went to a Zen retreat in just outside Ithaca, and my teacher and Leonard Cohen were good friends. And Cohen actually produced a album of, spoken word poetry that my teacher wrote.
Cool.
And when he died, they had done a little ceremonial tribute at the center, and people sang his songs. And so when I went there in March, a lot of these like lyric sheets were around, and I found, Hey, That's No Way to Say Goodbye. Yeah, so I did learn that song down at the Zen Center, and then went on tour and was playing it, and that's where that video came from. That was filmed during that tour.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And while we wind down here before we get cut off by the Google gods, where are you most engaged online? Instagram or wherever?
I would say Instagram is probably I'm most active in terms of the social media. Facebook I'm still pretty active on as well, because most things I post on Instagram get shared through Facebook. I have a fairly new TikTok account, but I'm really trying to use it. But it's a different kind of thing.
We're all trying to be hip with the kids. We're trying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they tell me I ought to do it, and try to find ways that are to engage meaningfully, but it's hard to do that when everyone only wants a 15-second video of you doing a four move sequence or something.
Yeah.
Haven't quite cracked that code, but
Just gotta find your
I don't care if I do or not, really. But pwyoungtree.com is the main website, and yeah, I mean, like, it's so easy to find us now. We're on all the platforms. We're on YouTube. If you look at our Instagram, you can find a link tree that'll just, you can stream us on any site from the link tree. You can go watch our videos. You can go to our website. Yeah. And, I mean, yeah, that's it.
Perfect.
We're not hard to find.
So you can find it all there. We'll put a link down in the show notes to Instagram and the link tree and the website. We'll throw them all in there. If you can't find them after that, then you're not trying hard enough.
Yeah.
And if you're looking for us, you can find our link tree in the description as well as a link to our Discord. We're almost a year in. We're still trying to push this Discord thing. So go in. If you're on Discord, join there. We have a bulletin board to post shows and all kinds of stuff in there. So check that out. And we are going to play out with Seas Change from your most recent release, mid-October.
Mm-hmm.
And we appreciate you coming on. Thanks for joining us. And we'll see everyone in a couple weeks.
Cool. Thanks for chatting.
Thanks again.
Bye.
Tides roll in, they roll out again. We watch behind our walls. Might get too high, take us out with them. Hey, maybe that's our fault. But honey, I need you to know that whatever comes our way, there's always love between us flowing, and in it I will stay. And when the seas change, I'll drift away with you. When the seas change, I'll drift away with you. The wind blows the windows of your eyes wide open. salt wind stings in the dawn. I'm reminded of the pain you held inside back when your curtains were drawn. But all fear and anxiety, oh, the tide will wash away. There's this thing inside of me, it always knows the way. And when the seas change, I'll drift away with you. Yeah, when the seas change, I'll drift away with you. Disappear from view as hilltops sink. The water takes the land. You tiptoe through the grass out to the brink. Just take me by the hand and then say, the tides won't do us in no more. Just be born anew. No matter what they got in store, say I'm not lost, I'm with you. When the seas change, I'll drift away with